Today's episode is brought to you by Pentester Academy, the leader of online cybersecurity education. Join more than 10,000 professionals from over 120 countries to learn security online. I'm Damien from Pentester Academy TV, and I want to welcome you to another episode of The Toolbox, where we showcase the latest and greatest open source tools. Add them to your tool collection today. Let's take a look at PacketSifter by Ross Burke.
Hello everybody, my name is Ross Burke and I am a security consultant and I will be showcasing PacketSifter today. So I have a short little presentation for you all so you can kind of get a feel for what PacketSifter is and some of the use cases behind it. But just before we kind of dive into that, I'll just talk a little bit about who I am. So like I mentioned, my name is Ross Burke. I am a security consultant at a cybersecurity firm, as well as a cybersecurity instructor at a university here in Houston, Texas. So just a little fun fact about me, I enjoy board games. I like to kickstart board games more specifically. So, I'll spend a lot of time on Kickstarter as well as doing cybersecurity projects and stuff like that. So that's a little bit about me. So we'll go ahead and dive into the agenda. So as far as the agenda today, we're going to be talking about the issue that I kind of realized whenever I was developing this tool, the solution, which is of course the PacketSifter. And we'll dive into the demo after that. So the problem, right? Why did this tool even get created in the first place? So whenever I was doing my analyst work, I worked in a situation where a NOC, the Network Operations Center team, would just hand us PCAPs and say, something bad happened and you need to figure out what happened. We fired some generic alert and we would have to investigate it. They would just give us a huge PCAP and say, find the evil. So it was pretty repetitive, and depending on how large the PCAP is, one simple request can generate, dozens of HTTP traffic, or we're talking about TLS or whatever it might be. Your packet size can get extremely large, and so kind of sifting through that manually is a lot of work on an analyst. And the tool was developed to hopefully solve that solution, or solve that issue rather, where too much data, not enough time, and you need quick analysis. So, like I mentioned, the issue with large PCAPs, Wireshark is a common network analysis tool that most security analysts leverage. If you've ever opened any PCAP over the size of, 50 megs in Wireshark, you'll start to notice there's a slow cycle to boot up and all the dissectors that have to happen. It just takes a while to open your PCAP. And it's not really scalable, right? Because if you're having to look it through, 100,000 packets, how scalable is that for a single security analyst? So if you're having to do that manually, you'll probably end up like this little guy over here who's a sad analyst, right? You don't want to be like that. You want to solve the situation. So you want to automate some of that process for you. And so PacketSifter is a solution to that. So PacketSifter is a tool that I developed that carves out data from that huge PCAP you have and kind of puts it in little buckets. So it compartmentalizes that data and then also enriches the data. So I actually have integrations that I will showcase today with AbuseIPDB and VirusTotal, where it'll actually geo-lookup DNS records that are in your PCAP, and it'll also do a hash lookup of the exported objects that are in your HTTP or SMB traffic. So again, big PCAP gets put into PacketSifter and you get a bunch of text files that are kind of akin to what you would expect in Wireshark if you've ever used it. Protocol hierarchy, HTTP statistics, DNS records, it kind of carves all that out for you. And it also makes smaller PCAPs for you. So instead of having to go back into your large PCAP, you can just have your HTTP traffic segmented off. You can have your DNS traffic segmented off. You can have your exported objects in your tar files, so it's kind of safe and sound. And then, like I said, you'll have your enrichment output as well from the AbuseIPDB and VirusTotal. So that's pretty much it. I'll showcase this in a little bit, and we'll kind of walk through some of the output files you'll get from this. But the big idea is big PCAP, carve it into little PCAPs, enrich some of that data, and hopefully ease analysis for the your user software. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the demo. So right now, if you look here, we have three, shell scripts PacketSifter.sh is the first one. That's the main one you'll want. That is the actual component. That's the actual tool. So whenever you download this from my GitHub, you'll get these 3 scripts here. And so all you want to do to initialize the 2 enrichment capabilities with VirusTotal and AbuseIPDB is just run those scripts. You need to run the script with PacketSifter in the exact same folder you're operating out of. But once you do that, all it'll do is just ask you for your API key. So I have that here, which of course, after this presentation, I will nuke it, but you just input your API key and it'll make a test request for google.com. And as long as you see that string here, you should be good to go. That's it. So now it will perform lookups against those DNS-A records. So I will not show you the VirusTotal one because VirusTotal keys are kind of hard to come by. So I don't want to compromise that one. But one of the caveats I should mention is that you'll need JQ, which is a common tool that's in most Linux distributions, but if you don't have it, you just need to download it. JQ is just a way to parse the JSON output from the tool. So extremely useful. And yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this. So we initialize the AbuseIPDB script. I already did that for the VirusTotal integration. So now all we need to do is call PacketSifter. So just to look at the help, you can run, with the -H, and you'll get your actual options. So you see here with -A, you'll get AbuseIPDB, you'll get the help file, the I is the input file, R is to resolve host names. So by default, in the spirit of good OPSEC, I didn't want to have host name resolution automatically happen, because if you're looking at something that could be malicious, you don't want traffic to the attacker infrastructure. You don't want to poke the bear per se. So if you wanted to do that, you can run it with -R. But again, in the practice of good OPSEC, only make sure you really want to do that, right? Because you don't want to tip off the attacker. And of course, -V will run VirusTotal. So I have my PCAP here, so I'll give it, it is going to be demo PCAP. And I'm going to run it with the AbuseIPDB integration and the VirusTotal. I'm not going to resolve the host name, just because, again, I don't want to tip off the attacker. So a lot of stuff happens as soon as you get your cap info, so you'll get the output of the actual PCAP, just some metadata about it, the size of it, how many packets are in it, things of that nature. Just if you want to look at it, you can. And then it will slowly carve out different sections and also give you some guidance about what you're actually looking at. So input-output statistics, it'll contain the protocol hierarchy, for instance, and the input-output broken up by 30 seconds and so on. And as you use this, you'll see it'll kind of populate with more output as we move along. But right now it's working through the HTTP data. So what it's doing is it's carving out all the HTTP objects you have, and it is also performing the VirusTotal lookups against those objects. So once it finishes that, it'll move on to the next section here. Right on time. So now we're doing SMB traffic. So it's carving out SMB traffic and also performing lookups if there is SMB traffic. And lastly, or second to last rather, it's doing DNS sifting. So it's pulling out DNS records, performing lookups against those. T-Shark is currently throwing some issues with some SMB packets as well. So just ignore these. That might happen, it might not, it just depends. But T-Shark kind of does that every once in a while. And lastly, it's sifting out FTP traffic. So just like that, that's all you had to do. And now we have several output files, and hopefully this will ease our analysis and looking at this PCAP. So if we just do an ls on our output file, you see we have, 15 or so files. All of them are valuable depending on what you want to do. With network traffic analysis, it's kind of hard to pinpoint an exact spot to begin. So it kind of is just up to your preference, right? For me, I like to get to the good stuff, so I'll go to HTTP immediately just because it's clear text most often. So we can just look at the HTTP info text file that came out. And this will just give you a sort of statistical analysis of all the HTTP traffic you have, the different types of methods, different types of response codes, and it'll also give you the hosts that were observed. So just looking at this PCAP already, we see antivirus update with a typo, wide update with a Y, right? So that's kind of suspicious. That was we didn't have to dive into the PCAP to find that. It was immediately, shown through this tool. Next, we see some other naked IP address, not a host name, just an actual IP address in the host header. Kind of weird. A lot of malware tends to hard code the host header, so you'll actually see an IP address that you'll directly connect to. So that can be something we can look at. Likewise, there's another naked IP address here that's pulling images called redbutton.png and cutscroll.png. More things to look at, and some other IP addresses that are apparently using SSL traffic, but it looks like we're seeing a domain controller beacon out to it and another desktop beacon out to it. So just off of one text file that came out of PacketSifter, we already have a few hits that we can kind of use to scope out what we want to find next. So again, more analysis. If you haven't used Wireshark before, some of this might look a little foreign to you, but it's just a way to look at different points of data and stack it and kind of use, sort of statistical analysis to pick out what you want to look at next. So we saw some naked IP addresses in there. We saw some potentially foreign domain names in there. So that's good to know. Next, we can look at the input-output statistics. So this will break down the whole PCAP in 30-second intervals. So this could be used for something like beaconing. If you have a host beaconing out at certain times, you'll see the bytes out and the bytes in will be of pretty similar intervals over 30 seconds. So that could be a tip, but in this situation, it's not really valuable. But towards the end of it, you do get your protocol hierarchy, so you can at least know what is contained in the PCAP. So in this instance, we're seeing Ethernet traffic, of course. We have DNS. We have link layer multicast name resolution. We have SMB, Kerberos, LDAP. Sort of just to kind of give you an idea of the scope of the PCAP, what you're actually working with. So that is that one. We'll take a look at the IP statistics next. So this will just give you, based on the layer 3 IP information, just a breakdown of the conversations between on a layer 3 level, and also kind of your biggest talker. So one thing I like to do is, whenever I'm looking at a PCAP, is just see who's talking the most. And that could be a tip as to which one's the most active and which one you should focus your analysis on. So in this instance, the largest packet in or out was to this .26.4 host, and the second most were to this .26.132 host. When you see the bytes count, you see if it's received versus transferred. Again, I keep reiterating, it's all about just trying to give you more background so you can kind of facilitate the analysis for a SOC analyst. And of course, this breaks it down by IP conversations, so on a layer 3 level, and so on and so forth. So if you look at the rest of these, you'll see SMB statistics, TCP statistics. It's kind of all more the same, but just in different buckets. So we looked at those. We can look at something that's a little bit more exciting now. So we'll look at some of the enrichment that we leveraged, AbuseIPDB and the VirusTotal integration. So if we look at, let's see, where is, let's look at IP lookup results. So IP lookup results is going to be the output from AbuseIPDB, that A switch. So if we look there, this is what the output looks like. So it looks up every single IP DNS-A record that's in there, and it'll give you the domain, the country code, and also the confidence of abuse. So one thing I always like to caveat is this is a 30-day interval, so it looks at the past 30 days to determine if it's been reported as malicious. You might find that it's not really high fidelity. Some people like to report Microsoft IPs as malicious, just normal update traffic. They might flag as malicious for whatever reason. So it is crowdsourced in that sense, right? So you want to vet your indicators that you get out of this. You don't want to just assume because the confidence score may be 30 that it's immediately negative, right? So looking through here, we have a bunch of hits, abuse IP, confidence score of 9, again on a Microsoft IP. Could be an Azure IP, that might be something malicious potentially, but just you have to take it with a grain of salt. So what I like to do, just in the sake of time, is I will look for just the string abuse in that capture file. So we can just see, was there anything that's really stood out as malicious, right? If I saw something in here that had a hit of 80 or 90, then that's something that's probably malicious. But the highest score we have in this PCAP is 18, which isn't too high. So we're probably not going to investigate that too much because it doesn't look like it's a high fidelity indicator. So we'll go ahead and move on to the VirusTotal instead. So we realize that the DNS-A records don't really have anything that's too, and nothing really rose to the surface too much. So we'll now look at the HTTP VT results. So we'll look at VirusTotal lookup results over HTTP. And this is what that output file looks like. So you have the following error, which means that this hash that we looked up was not found in VirusTotal at all, which could mean a few things. It can mean that this potential piece of malware was specifically developed for your organization alone, which could be pretty scary. Or it just means that this file wasn't found, right? Nobody submitted it to VirusTotal. It could be an important, document that maybe is your internal document to your organization. Of course, don't upload that to VirusTotal, right? But that is something we can look at. When you see an actual detection score, so we see MD5 of this, we have a score of 0 for malicious and undetected 59, probably a benign file. So we can just skip through that. And as you go along here, you can see it gets pretty large depending on how large the PCAP is, but we see we have some hits. So we have malicious 28, malicious 47. So that's a pretty high fidelity. 47 AV agents will actually detect this as malicious. That's pretty interesting. So again, for the sake of time, just to kind of streamline this, what I like to do is just do a grep for malicious. This is a case-insensitive grep for malicious against HTTP VT results. And so we see we have, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hits. So 6 malicious files potentially just within the HTTP traffic alone. So if you want to print out the MD5 that is attached to each of these, all you got to do is just run it with the C switch on grep. And what that'll do is it'll print out 3 hits before your match and 3 hits after your match. So you can kind of get the full scope of whatever you were hitting on. In this instance, the word malicious is what I was looking at. So we have malicious 50, and this is the MD5 that is actually malicious. So now we know that this MD5 is apparently a pretty malicious attachment or document or executable, whatever it might be. So what we can do is we can just copy this, and let's actually grep for that. So if we grep for this hash against the HTTP hash to object text file, all this does is just map the HTTP objects we exported to the actual hash. We will see that this hash was redbutton.png. So this malicious quote unquote PNG is what caused this detection to happen. So I don't know about you, but typically I don't think of malicious PNGs, right? I don't think of pictures being malicious. So in my mind, this is probably not a PNG, right? This is probably something else. So let's, now that it's already been carved out too, right? Because if we look here, you see the HTTP objects.tar file. It's already been carved out for us. So all we need to do is untar that, and we will print out all these files. And let's look at the exported directory. So we have the HTTP objects directory. So let's go ahead and move into that. And let's do a strings against that red button. So strings is just to gather general strings that are contained within that object. So just your usual analysis, if you will. Let me spell it wrong first. Red button. Yes. Okay. Let's do strings. Objects. Red button. There it is. Okay. Redbutton.png. And let's less that so we don't DOS our computer or anything. So this PNG has this string at the very top of it. This program cannot be run in DOS mode, which is a very big indicator for an executable. So just off of, again, leveraging PacketSifter, we found that There are naked IP addresses that our hosts are beaconing out to. We see malicious files, we see malicious quote unquote PNG files, but when we're just doing any sort of basic static analysis of that piece of malware, we're seeing this header at the very top. This program cannot be run in DOS mode. So it's likely an executable. So just within 15 minutes or so, we already have a good hint of something that's happening, right? So after that, I mean, the world is your oyster, right? You can grab that file, dynamic analysis, set it off, capture indicators that way, continue along the attack path of the attacker. You can look up that file in VirusTotal just to see what you get. But one thing I like to do, and this is kind of the basis of this tool, is leveraging T#. So if I just wanted to say, I want to look at the demo PCAP that I was just leveraging. Actually, let's do this. Oh, where are you? There we are. Okay, so let's just carve open that demo PCAP. Or actually, let's just look at the HTTP. So we have HTTP traffic carved out in this HTTP PCAP. We can just look at that and do a simple search, leveraging T#, and just search for red button. So just leveraging T#, we see there's 4 different hits for the string red button, and that is potentially the malicious file we were just investigating using that MD5 lookup. So from there, we can see that we can just follow this stream if we wanted to, but we also have 2 hosts that are actually beaconing out to this potentially malicious IP address to grab this red button documentation. So pretty quickly, we're able to find now our infection vector isn't just one host, that we could have 2 compromised hosts. So again, just by using this tool, leveraging a little bit of T#, some command line kung fu, if you will, we've already found that there's 2 infected hosts potentially that are beaconing out, that are downloading this file. So from there, we can just continue on using T# and dive into it and continue leveraging the output files of PacketSifter to kind of aid your analysis. But we don't need to dive into this PCAP too much. We're not going to get down to the very end of what the true attack is or what the big goal, the actions and objectives were. But this is just to demonstrate the use case of PacketSifter and why you would want to use it. And that is it for me.
Okay. Thank you, Ross, for the presentation. Before we end off the whole recording, the whole presentation, I do have one question for you. Is there any aspect in the tool that you would like the community to contribute more? Is there like a dream on the tool that you would like the community to contribute more to build on the existing tool?
Right. So there isn't any main goal, but one thing I want people to break it, right? Because this thing is supposed to be scalable, meaning that, depending on how large your PCAP is, I want to see what the results you get back are and if they're useful. So as long as people are using it and trying to break it, then that makes me happy, because let's stress test it. Let's see if this really is scalable. It's scalable for me, but also I wrote it, right? So I kind of know the use case behind it. So if I have other people trying it out and leveraging it and using it and getting feedback, then I'm happy.
So, being released earlier this year, how's the feedback like from the community till now then?
So far, so good. People have, I distributed it out to people, my colleagues, my friends, and they're using it for their specific situations. And they're loving it. The only feedback I've really gotten is the unfortunate dependency of VirusTotal. So VirusTotal API keys are thousands of dollars, right? They're really expensive. So you're kind of at the mercy of unless you're going to pay for it, just a generic API key, which has limitations with that. So, their complaint is maybe find a different tool that maybe can give you the same sort of output, just free. But of course, that's a dream one day. That's kind of hard to find, right? So, but yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I think that is a fair point. At least you point it out, and then probably people will give you suggestion with regards to that to replace it on a free mode rather than paying thousands of dollars. Ross, thank you for sharing this wonderful presentation of PacketSifter. is marvelous, and I do hope that the tool continue to scale at the level that you are looking at, and I hope that the community continue to give you the feedback. I once again want to thank you for coming on board to this episode of the Toolbox and give such a wonderful and comprehensive presentation of the tool that you have created.
Absolutely, Damien. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, thank you and see you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Ross, once again for coming on board to this episode of the Toolbox. For more information on this tool, do see our description box below. Subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for the next episode of the Toolbox.